Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. I'm Ben Woodthorpe. I'm here to do a little bit of work with you today in Excel around cleaning lists of data. Before I talk about the content that I'm going to cover with you, I'm going to talk about sort of how the webinar is going to work. So don't worry about making notes or trying to have a go at the same time that I'm describing stuff, because I'm only going to spend half an hour, 45 minutes with you, so it's a bit too much to try and have a go, make notes and watch what I'm talking about. Because what I will do at the end of the webinar, I will send you a cheat sheet. So I'm going to send you in Word a little sheet, one sheet wonder, going through the main points of what I've talked about. But what I'll also do as well is I will send you a full recording of this entire webinar. So everything I'm telling you now, you'll get a video about this as well. Also, after the course, if you want to look at future webinars that we've got booked in, and we've got at least one booked in for December, please visit, can you see this web link here? Microsoft-training-course.com. One other thing to mention, you should have an icon on your little control panel that you've logged into, which is for chat. Feel free to type a little question in there if you've got anything you want to ask a question about. And though I won't be able to answer every single question because there's quite a few people in here, I'll try my best to work through the majority of them and give you some kind of an answer. Right, so let's have a look at what we're going to cover. Now this may be 40, this may be 45 minutes, it may be a bit quicker, but I'm aiming for 45 minutes tops. We're going to look at splitting information in Excel. So if something's in one cell in a spreadsheet, we'll split it into separate cells. We're then going to look at joining it back together. So sticking information from separate cells together into one, effectively, string of text. After that, we're going to look at changing the case of text, so uppercase, lowercase and proper. So, you know, if something's really inconsistent, we can make it all look the same. I'll show you a nice little trick for removing any spaces. So spaces at the start of text or the end of text, I'll show you how to do that. And I'll show you how to effectively do a find and replace within text using a function called substitute. Okay, and if we do really well, if I get through this reasonably quick, I might show you a few other little Brucey bonuses as well, additional areas. Right, so look, a little bit of a quick plug. We do offer courses. If you like what you see, get in touch. We can come to you and we can deliver any training within the Microsoft Office suite as an on-site training course. And we can also do these webinars as a custom bespoke session just with you or your staff. If we come to you, we can travel nationwide. We can bring laptops with us as well, so we can actually bring all the kit. And if you do want to recommend us on to anyone you know, other companies, friends, family, etc., do let us know of any referral opportunities, and we do offer rewards for this. You can find more details about us on Trustpilot, where there's plenty of reviews about what we do, and we're on all the normal social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Google Plus and YouTube, etc. And these are all the applications that we can cover. So Access, Excel, Outlook, Word, list goes on. Right, enough of that. I'm going to stop the plug. Let's actually get on with something and have a look at something within Excel, which is what you're all really here for. So I'll also as well send you the file I'm working on during this session, so that when you come to look at the video afterwards, you can have a bit of a play with the actual file, so you don't have to mess around with your own data. You can use this dummy data. First thing we're going to look at is we're going to have a go with splitting information. Now, if we look at this particular file, there's a little bit of a problem with this file in the sense that whoever put it together put the first name and surname all in the same box. So the problem we've got here is if ever we come to try and alphabetize the list, we can only alphabetize the list on the first name. We can't do it on the surname. So what we need to be able to do is effectively split this into first name and surname. So first step, you have to give yourself a gap to split the information into, because I'm going to have this column here and I'm going to rename this first name, and I'm going to have this column here and I'm going to call this one last name. Reason why I need the gap is the first name's going to stay here and the last name's going to stay here, so we need a space to put that information in. Following that, I'm going to then highlight over all of the information that I then want to split. Because you've got to tell Excel what you want to be able to split, what information you want to separate out. Following that, in the data menu at the top, I have a button here called text to columns. It's not exactly in the middle, but it is roughly in the middle of the tab. Now, the really cool thing about this particular function is it's a wizard. Once you click onto text to columns, it comes up with, can you see here, convert text to columns wizard step 1 of 3, and it tries to guide you through it. Admittedly, I don't like the language they use, it's a bit techy, but if I give you a description of this screen, you've got two options, you've got delimited and you've got fixed width. I'm going to show you fixed width initially, and you'll probably quite quickly see why this isn't suitable for us right now, but I'm going to go for delimited, and this is the method I'm going to use to split right now. If I go next, it gives me, can you see a little preview of, the people in that list, Adam Long, Anna Morris, idea of, based on a, particular position, fixed column width is, we can come along and we can physically click where we want to split the information apart. That's not going to work for us now because we have people with different length first names, but if I was to move away here, we could potentially use that for the pay reference column where, first 3 characters are one group and then we've got another 2 characters. So we could use that for that particular data, but for the names, not so great. So we're going to use one called delimited. Delimited is where you're going to actually physically say, based on a character within your list, that's where I want to split. And in our case, the character would be the space. So I want to go delimited, and I'm going to go next. And here is where you choose the type of character that you want to use to split the information apart. Now, these are standard predefined things that they expect you to want to actually split your information on, but you can actually change it. You can use the other. But if I just quickly tick space, can you see it puts a little line in between the first name and the surname? If I untick space, it removes it. So that's how it's going to split. Now, look, if it was something other, we'd tick other, we'd go to the other, and let's say it was email address, and we might want to split on the @ symbol. Can you see that would then split the information apart? But I'm going to go space. After that, I'm going to click finish. Bish, bash, bosh. Can you see first name, surname, all split into 2 separate columns, okay? Now, look, I'll very quickly undo that. Just to recap, you highlight your names, data, text to columns, delimited, next, pick what you want to split, and then we hit finish, and it will split that information apart for us. Now, one thing to make you aware of with this, just a little problem, and I'm just going to undo what I've done there. I'm going to just change the first person's name, and I'm going to put this as Adam Long Smith. So if you see this name here, and I'll zoom in quite a bit more, can you see we've now got 3 names? Adam space Long space Smith. Now I'll do this just for the first few, just here. I'm going to go data, text to columns, and note, can you see I've only given myself 1 spare gap to split into for the last name column? I'm doing this deliberately to be wrong so you can see what happens. I'm going to go next. See, with space ticked, it splits into Adam, Long, and Smith, because every single time there is a space, it's going to split it. So you have to be aware of this because this can cause problems. After this, I'm going to hit finish. It does warn you, but can you see here? Do you want to replace the contents of the destination cells? So this is basically Excel spitting its dummy out the pram and saying to you, there's something in the way of the word Smith, that third column with the employee number. If you carry on, it's going to replace that. Now here's the problem with this. You've got to be very, very careful with this. If I click OK, it does it, but can you see it also replaces all of the information for all of those rows, because it assumes everyone in that area that we highlighted before has 3 words that needs to be split. So in this case, I'm just going to undo what I did. What I would always recommend, if you are unsure, give yourself some extra space when you're splitting. So you would drag over like this, data, text to columns, delimited, next, split on my space. If I now hit finish, can you see it doesn't matter because I had an additional gap? we've not lost any information, because you know, you don't know if you've got a big list of data. I mean, we can see this all on the screen right now, but if you've got a lot of information, you don't know whether you need 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, n number of gaps. So in my opinion, err on the side of caution. Is always worth giving yourself a little bit more space so that you're not going to delete any of your data. Brilliant. Okay, so let me just resplit my list. So I've just got first name and surname. Just bear with me because I'm going to show you something else in a moment. So that was splitting information, and text to columns allows us to split, and we can split on, you know, a space. We can split on a fixed width. Now what I'm going to do in terms of questions, that there haven't been any yet, but if any do roll in, when they roll in, I'll finish what I've done at that point and then look at any questions that have come in and try and answer them as I go along. But if you do have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat window. But let's have a look now at joining information together. Now I'm going to do a really simple variation of this first of all. I'm going to add myself a new column in, and I'm going to call this column full name. Now in the full name box or full name column, I want to add my first name and my surname together to make full name. And this is very valid. You know, splitting information is useful, but sometimes you have data where it's separate and you need to join it together for whatever reason. So if you watch here, this is how we do it. And look, I'll let you into a little secret. This is not the only way of doing it. This is the way I prefer. There is, in actual fact, a function called concatenate, which you can use to do this, but I tend to avoid that. I do it ever so slightly different. And I will zoom in quite a bit so we can see this on the screen really well. So let's just wait for that to refresh. Right, so I say equals on my keyboard. So I'm going to do a formula, a function to do this, to join these two pieces of information together. I'm going to click onto the first name, which in this line is Adam. Now if I were to press enter, it's going to come up just saying Adam, because it's just picking whatever the information is in A2. Let's go back in here. Now the easiest way, in my opinion, to join these two pieces of information together is to use the ampersand. So effectively the abbreviated and symbol. On most keyboards it's Shift and 7 along the number row at the top of your keyboard. You'll have an ampersand there. Following this, I click onto my last name just there. Now this is not strictly speaking what we want, but if I now press enter, can you see we get Adam Long, or one word. Now not far off, it's joined the two together, but we want a space there. So I'm just going to delete this part. I'll leave my ampersand in. So I've just got A2 and. Now I'm going to go speech mark, space, speech mark. Now the reason why I'm opening a speech mark, putting a space in and closing a speech mark is anything that you put in between speech marks is considered to be static, almost filler text. It's repetitive text. So here, let me show you an example of this because I'm going to use that to put a space in, but I could put something like this. Works here. Close speech marks. If I now press enter, can you see Adam works here? If I were to pull this formula down using the sort of the blob at the bottom corner, can you see Anna works here, Annie works here, Cynthia, David and Davis all work here. So all we're using the speech marks for is a way of creating a space in between those two names. Now the next thing I must do is I go and. So I put another ampersand in there, and the ampersand, and I didn't really make much light to this, but the ampersand is the connector. Any two different things that you need to join together, you must have an ampersand in between those two things. So I have an ampersand between A2 and the speech marks because I need to join whatever's in A2 to whatever's in the speech marks. Then I have an ampersand after the speech marks because I'm now going to click onto the last name because I need to have something which connects those two pieces of information together. Now once I'm ready, if I press enter, can you see it comes up saying Adam Long? If I now drag that formula down, can you see it repeats that exact same pattern all the way down that list for you, using relative cell addressing as it would for any kind of maths. And because this is a formula or function, if I just change this here, can you see it all automatically changes based on whatever was typed into, the first name and the last name. So the pattern is you always, if you want to join two things together, you always have an ampersand in between them. And if you want something which is almost static filler text, you always have to have speech marks and put that information in between those speech marks. Now, just to exaggerate this a little bit, and if you've been on courses with me in the past, you may have seen me do this particular example. I'm going to show you very similar thing, but it looks a lot more complicated. It looks way more complicated than it actually is, but it's just the same idea that we've just done. So here, equals, I'm going to get the first name and speech mark dot speech mark and I'm going to click onto the last name. So that's going to give me, can you see, Adam.Smith. Then I'm going to go and speech mark at acme.com, close speech mark. So what I've done there is I've said, first name and a dot, that's my filler text, and the surname and some more filler text, but I'm using the filler text there, can you see, to put almost like the end of an email address, so at acme.com. If I now press enter, can you see adam.smith at acme.com? If I now drag that formula down, can you see there? Job's a good one. It will put all of the names, all of the email addresses for you there so that you can, rattle that email address off to wherever you want. But, that looks way more complicated than what we did before, but it's exactly the same. We're just using much of the same thing. Right, now, look, I'm just going to pause one moment. I've had one little question as I've done those email addresses. So someone said, I've done first name dot surname. Is it possible to have, instead of adam.smith, could I have a smith at acme.com? Right, really good question. It's a tiny bit off topic, but it's a really, really useful one to look at. So if I show you this, there is a function called left in Excel, and how left works, it's equals left, open bracket. Now left, if you see on this little post-it note that comes up, and in fact let me zoom in a little bit so we can see this a little bit better, because I appreciate this is quite small on the screen at your end. Let me just make this a bit bigger. So equals left, then if I open the brackets, I've got a little post-it note comes up. Now left, what it does, it allows you to tell Excel a piece of text, and you then tell Excel how many characters you want to grab from that piece of text from the left of that piece of text. So I want to grab from the first name the first character. So I would click into, can you see the word Adam? So that's the piece of text I want to grab information from. I'm then going to put a comma in, and the next thing it asks me for is something called numchars. Numchars is how many characters you want to grab from the left of that text. So if I put a number 1 in there, can you see there it comes up, if I close the bracket and press enter, can you see it comes up saying A? Now if I went back into this and instead of a number 1 put a number 2, can you see it would come up with AD just there? So how many characters you want to grab from the left of the text, you would specify 1, 2, 3, 4. Now there's left, there is also, if I change this, there's one called right. Now right, can you see I've said 1 character and I've used the right function, it's grabbing M, which is 1 from the right of the text. So you can use left or right depending on what you're doing. So I would do left. Now I could do and, similar to what we did before, and if I click onto Smith and then press enter, can you see we've got a Smith? If I then wanted to bolt on the end of that, the at acme.com, I would do and, open speech marks, at acme.com. make sure I close my speech marks off, and then press enter. Can you see asmith@acme.com? And all we did to do that was we used the left function there. So it's left, pick the cell, and then (1), and that's going to bring one character back from the start of that text. Okay, I'll leave that up on the screen. I'm just going to have a really quick check through my questions before I move on to something else. If there's nothing, we'll move on to the next area. Just bear with me 1 second. Right, okay, here's a really good question. So Alison has asked, if you want to split the name but have the last name first, is there an easy way to change it so the first name comes, wait there, sorry about this. The last name is first, so the first and the last name are the wrong way round. Right, so what Alison's talking about, and I'm just going to undo what I've done with this and get it back to the start, is, for instance, in my original Excel file, it's entirely possible that instead of having, you know, in this case, I've got Adam Long, it might be that Long Adam is that particular way. Well, yes, you can. It's pretty much what we've done so far is just a little bit of a faff around with the data. So I'm just going to concentrate on these top two here. So what you would do, we've got Long and Adam here. We would split the information using the text to columns. So I'm going to use delimited just here, and I'm going to split it on a space. So can you see that? Splits it out. And admittedly, I've labeled A and B incorrectly here, but I'm just going to click finish. Can you see that splits this out? Obviously, that is the last name, isn't it? And that is the first name just there. Okay. And then after that, it's the same as what we did for the full name a moment ago, but we join it in the way that we want to join it. So instead of doing equals, click onto that, space, that, we would actually go, click onto the first name, and, speech mark, space, speech mark, and then click onto the last name. So can you see we've turned it round to be Adam Long rather than Long Adam? And then, you know, it'd just be a matter of pulling that information down. Because once you've split the information apart, this formula that we can do, you know, with the ampersands and the speech marks that we've been playing around with, you know, you can use this to combine stuff in whatever way you want. And that's the real benefit of this. It's very, very flexible. So look, I hope that answers your question, Alison. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to crack on and show you something ever so slightly different next. So just bear with me while I reset my file so I've got something a little bit cleaner to show you with. And the next thing I'm going to show you is we're going to have a little bit of a go with messing around with case, okay, and also sort of cleaning data up with spaces, etc. in. So I'm just going to zoom in ever so slightly, and I'm going to give myself a few new columns so that I can show you a couple of different things around case. And again, look, don't be shy. If anyone's got any questions, ask me that question in that chat window, and I'll try my best to you know, show you something on the screen to help you with your problem. So, got my names. I want to maybe play around with the case of the text because it's entirely possible that stuff has been entered a little bit, you know, shall we say weirdly within that you know, list. So I'm just going to bodge a few examples of, you know, what people tend to put into data, and it's terrible. You end up looking at it and thinking it's awful, and you just want to clean it up and make it look a little bit better. So look, there's one example. Ben Woodthorpe with lowercase first letter, uppercase rest. We've got John Smith, all capitals. Jane Smith, where Jane is all lowercase and Smith is all uppercase. So we've got the good thing about this is there's a really quick way of sorting this. We've got three functions. We've got one called upper, we've got one called lower, and we've got one called proper. Now they all work in the same way, and it starts off with equals, and then we type in upper, if we want to make it uppercase, an open bracket. Once we've opened the bracket, we click onto the cell that we want to make uppercase. We then close the bracket. Okay. Now, if I now press enter, can you see that makes Ben Woodthorpe all uppercase? And if I were to drag that formula down, can you see it makes all of them uppercase consistently, every single one of those names uppercase? There is also one called equals lower. Can you see exactly the same drill? The other one was upper, this one is lower, and you nailed it on the head, you got it. Lower makes it all lowercase. So if I click onto the name, close the bracket, press enter, can you see that's made Ben Woodthorpe all lowercase? And if I drag the function down, can you see all of the other ones are also made lowercase? We've also got one here called proper. If I go into proper, equals proper, open the bracket, click onto the name, close the bracket off, press enter. Now proper is a little bit more slick actually, because what proper case does, proper case, if I drag that down, can you see makes all of the first letters of each word uppercase and makes the rest lowercase. So that's what they define as proper case. So you've got effectively it's equals upper, open bracket, put your text in, close bracket, and then they all work on exactly the same principle. It's equals upper, equals lower, equals proper. So can you see equals upper, equals lower, and equals proper as well? Okay, really, really good for data cleansing then, because that is a big thing within Excel, in my opinion, when you're dealing with a lot of lists, you know, being able to make text consistent how it's been entered. Right, next one I'm going to show you, and this is a really good but really simple thing that you can use, simple little function. So one thing that I come across in Excel is very common people put spaces in text, start, end, too many spaces in the middle, whatever it might well be. And number one, your text can look very weird, inconsistent. But number two, this can mess things up like VLOOKUPs and all sorts of other functions. So I've just manually put something in there so you can see, can you see there's a load of spaces before Ben, there's a load of spaces in between Ben and Woodthorpe, and there's a load of spaces after. And I want to get rid of those spaces. I want to tidy this up, make it a little bit easier to see what the crack is. Okay, so we've got a function very similar to upper, lower and proper in its complexity. We start off with equals and we type in trim. Okay, I'm going to open the bracket, so equals trim, open bracket. I'm going to click onto the text. I'm then going to close the bracket off just there like so. If I now press enter, can you see it's removed any leading spaces? It's also reduced the amount of spaces in between each word to 1. And can you see it's also removed any trailing spaces as well? So if I now pull this formula down, if you look at all of these names here, can you see John Smith, Jane Smith, Adam Long? On the one where I've done the trim function, just there, can you see it's actually removed the spaces at the start, removed the spaces at the end. We've also only got the one space in between each word. So it's really quickly, like it says on the tin, trimmed off effectively the fat from that piece of information. Right, before I move on, I'm just going to really quickly check the questions. Right, okay. So I've had a question come in from Bob, and he is asking, let me just have a quick look. Right, okay. So he is asking, can we combine the trim and the upper or the lower or the proper? So effectively mash the two pieces of features, you know, the two functions we've just done together. Yes. And it doesn't matter which way you actually mash these two together, but if I show you the gist of how this works. So I'm going to do equals trim, open bracket, click onto my name, close bracket. Now what I'm going to show you now is something called nesting. It's putting a function inside a function, and I always think of this as being a bit like those Russian doll toys you get, where you've got one Russian doll, smaller doll inside, smaller doll still. And what I tend to do when I'm nesting, I build one function, make sure it works. Can you see there's my trim? That's the trim working. Then what you have to do is you build the next function around the function you've already done. So it's one inside the other. What we're not doing is we're not putting them next to each other, so it's inside. So if I now, let's make this proper. So I'm going to do proper, open bracket. And one thing I do as well when I'm nesting, put a space or two in there, because that then, and a space or two at the end, that helps you see, can you see they're separate functions? So can you see I've put the trim inside the proper, those brackets are inside. You must always make sure you've got the same amount of brackets pointing one way as pointing the other. So if I now press enter, can you see it's got rid of the spaces leading and trailing, and it's reduced the amount of spaces in between, and it's also, if you notice, made it all proper case. And it wouldn't have mattered in this particular instance anyway if you'd have put trim here or you'd have put trim here and reversed the two round, because what it's doing is it's trimming the result of the proper, or it's applying proper to the result of the trim, and the order that they go in does not matter. It's immaterial to Excel. It's entirely up to you which way you want to do those. Okay, so yeah, Bob, that's the way that you can sort of combine those two things together. And like I said, when you're nesting, give yourself some space and build inside out or outside in, rather than trying to write it all in one go, because it will go wrong if you try and write it in one go. I can almost certainly guarantee it's quite hard to get the brackets right if you don't just build the first bit, get that right, and then move on to the next bit. Okay, so that's some stuff around case and trimming. What I also want to show you, and this is kind of the last main area that I've got on the docket, so to speak. But the last thing I want to show you is something called substitute. Now, substitute is a function that allows you to effectively swap information around within text. So it's a little bit like, how to describe it, a little bit like a find and replace for text or numbers within, you know, a cell or set of cells. So I'm just going to give myself a bit of space to sort of emphasize this a little bit more. But I'm going to talk to you about the pay reference here. Now, my pay reference column in this file is a set of numbers, and they're all separated out by a dash. So in this case, this top one, I've got 372-12-7281. Now, really exciting stuff, but look, let's say instead of a dash, I want to make it a slash, or I want to replace it with nothing. I want to get rid of those dashes, and I want to just, you know, turn that into one piece of, you know, string of numbers. No dash, no gap, no nothing. But also, what if I want to only do it with the second dash? I don't want to do it with all of them. Well, this is where a function called substitute comes in. And substitute is a way of, how to put it, it's kind of a bit like find and replace, but it's based on a function. So you've got a little bit more option to play around with this, and you can also then use the result of this and feed it into another function like trim or upper or lower or proper, etc. Now, substitute works like this. It's equals substitute. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 things that you are asked to tell the substitute function. You've got one called text, then you've got old text, you've got new text, and you've got instance number. Incidentally, one of these things that it's asking for, the one called instance num, is in square brackets. Now, just in case you're unsure of this, square brackets, when it's asking for something in a function, anything that's got square brackets around it means it's an optional argument. You don't have to tell it this particular part of the function. It will still work without that particular part. Doesn't mean you need to put the square brackets around it. It just means it's optional. And I'll show you all of these. I'll even include the optional bit as well. Now, the first thing we're going to tell it is the thing called text. Text is this. because we want to substitute something within this text for something else, and text is the thing that we want to manipulate. So in this case, the pay reference, comma, old text. Old text is the thing within the text that we want to get and replace with something or substitute with something. So in this case, I'm going to go for the dash, but it could be I want to replace any number 12 with something else. You see, it could be anything you want it to be, but I'm just going to go for the dash in this case. Always in speech marks if it's text-based, yeah? Can you see that? I'll put that in speech marks. After that, comma. Next thing, new text. Now, new text, again, I'm going to put in speech marks. I'm going to put a slash in there, close my speech marks off. Now, in this case, what this is going to do is going to replace all of the dashes with a slash. Yeah, that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to leave the instance number, which is this optional argument, the last one, blank, because I'm going to come back to that. So I'm going to close the bracket off and I'm going to press enter. And what you'll see now is, if I drag that down, can you see every single dash has now been replaced with a slash? Okay. Now, that can be useful for lots of different things. I mean, we can use that to help us with text to columns if we wanted to. You know, if there's a particular big group of characters we want to split on, and text to columns can only split on one character, well, we can replace like a word with one character, and then we can use text to columns to split. So these things kind of hook together, but on the simple you know, level of what this is doing, it's saying I want to grab that dash, don't want the dash anymore, I want to just replace it with a slash, and it's whatever you want, whatever variation. Now, just to knock this up a slight bit more, the bit that I ignored was the instant number. I'm going to go comma at the end of this, and can you see there instance num comes up as a little post-it note. Now, instance number, if I specify this, so if I say number 1, what this is going to do, it's going to replace the first dash with a slash. If I now press enter, can you see 372/12-7281? So can you see it's only replaced the first one, right? If I go into here and then change number 1 to 2, can you see the first dash remains as a dash, but the second dash, can you see, is replaced with a slash? And again, look, you know, if I just drag this down, can you see it follows that exact same pattern of replacing, in this case, only the second dash with a slash? And again, I know we're getting quite granular here, but do you know what? When you're cleaning data, it's always these fiddly, faffy little bits that you're trying to figure out on a Friday afternoon, and you've got loads of things to do, that if you're just aware of this function can save you a lot of hassle. So if you think of substitute as almost being a, shall we say, a more targeted and function-based version of, well, not completely, but most of it is a function-based version of find and replace, you're not far wrong in terms of what it does. Okay, now look, I'm going to leave this up on the board so you can, on the screen, so you can quickly see that. I'm just going to have a quick look at any questions, see if there's anything to answer. Just bear with me 1 second. Right, okay. So look, I've had one more question come through, and it's around selecting text. I may have this wrong, but I'm being asked if you've got a large number of lines, is there an easy way to select the text? Right, so I might have this wrong. If I do have this wrong, by all means email me after the session. I'll send you this all on email, so feel free to reply to me if I've not quite got this question right. But I'm assuming what we're talking about is if you want to highlight all of this information here, okay? So all of these names. So it's quite easy to do if you've got a small list, but if you've got quite a big list and you want to drag down and there's 50,000 lines to grab, well, look, really quick and easy way of doing this is you can use a keyboard shortcut. You click onto the first item that you want to grab. On your keyboard, you hold Control Shift and you press the down arrow on your keyboard, and what that will do, it will quickly go from where you are to the end of the list and highlight all of that information. Also, if you were to do Control Shift and up, it will go from where you are to the end of the information that you're currently within. Or if you were to do Control Shift and right or left, it will go from where you are to the end of the information that you're currently within. Hope that helps you. I think I understood your question, but if I'm wrong, just by all means reply to the email that I sent to you with, a bit of clarification if I've missed the point, and I'll try my best to, sort of help you on that line. Now, look, what I'm going to say now is in terms of the standard content I've come to show you, we've got through it. What I will do after this webinar, I will send you the cheat sheet, sort of talking about what we've covered with a bit of blurb about, what we've done, how it works roughly. I'll send you a recording of the video as well. So that will take me about an hour to upload that to YouTube, but that will come to you as well. One thing I'd like to ask you to do, if it's at all possible, as soon as I close this webinar, you'll be asked to fill in a feedback form. Please fill that in, because one of the questions is, what areas would you want us to cover on another one of these free webinars? So if you fill that in, you get your opportunity to kind of sway us for future webinars. So if there's anything particularly that you want to learn about, let us know and we'll try and put it into a webinar, hopefully in the new year. I'll also email you a link to our tips blog, which has a link to all of the future webinars on it, and it also has all of the recordings for all of the past webinars, so you don't have to miss out on anything we've done in the past. I really appreciate you all coming, and thank you very much for your time, and hope you have a great week, and I will send you some more details, cheat sheet, etc. shortly. Have a great day and look forward to seeing you on another webinar. Thank you very much.